Yo, it's the Latino Newsletter podcast, a show about us all the time. I'm your host, Julio Ricardo Varela, and a special thanks to the generous support from the Latino Community Foundation for Season 1 of this podcast. Learn more about the Latino Community Foundation at latinocf.org. Okay, we did it. 10 episodes, double digits. 10 episodios. This is episode 10. Love it. And today we're going to talk about Latino representation in working in the political space. And I am honored to have two amazing guests who are joining us from the nation's capital. They are both involved with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, CHCI. And it's big news because the Latino Newsletter podcast has its first member of Congress on the show. U.S. Representative Adriano Espaillat proudly represents New York's 13th Congressional District. Representative Espaillat is the first Dominican American to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, and his congressional district includes Harlem, East Harlem, West Harlem, Hamilton Heights, Washington Heights, Inwood, Marble Hill, and the Northwest Bronx. You know, I know a little bit about the Northwest Bronx. Congressman Espaillat, welcome to the Latino Newsletter podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our second guest is Marco A. Davis, President and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, CHCI, which is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to developing the next generation of Latino leaders. You know, we're going to talk about what CHCI does, and Marco is the person who heads it up. He's the president CEO. And, you know, the goal is to up the game for Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latinx students and young professionals. And they do a lot of convenings with members of Congress and other public officials, corporate executives, nonprofit advocates, and thought leaders to discuss issues facing the nation and the Hispanic community. Marco, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Very excited.
Marco, what exactly does the CHCI do, and why is it important?
Sure. So CHCI is a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, D.C. Our mission is broadly put to develop the next generation of Latino leaders. What that translates to, what we do are sort of two main types of things. One is our core bread and butter leadership development programs. We provide students and young professionals opportunities to develop their leadership and professional development skills, most notably by working in congressional offices through our internship and fellowship programs. They get firsthand experience working for a member of Congress, working in government, but they also build their leadership skills and they also explore what it is to be a Latino leader for the community. And then the second thing we do is we're a convener. We bring together leaders from the public, the private, and the nonprofit sector to talk about the issues that are of most concern to the nation and to the Latino community, with an eye towards having our leadership contribute to solving those challenges, to addressing those problems, to creating a better reality for our community and for the country.
Congressman Espaillat, I mean, the Capitol is where you work. That's your office. So what are the representation challenges you are seeing as a Latino and your staff sees, and why is the CHCI important for your staff and for your office and try to help with that representation?
Well, one of the most important things, obviously, is the ability of someone to get a good paying job and to make ends meet. And so that continues to be a major hurdle for Latinos. And of course, we're very proud of the fact that 70% of the CHCI participants, although they come from a household income of $65,000 or less, nearly 80% of them, or the alumni, reported incomes above $75,000, which is well above the general Latino population of $62,000. And of course, this alumni are also educated. That 70% of the alumni are first-generation college graduates. 82% hold post-secondary educational credential, with 40% of them earning a graduate degree. So we're helping push people up, because the main issue that we find in our community, whether it is through a lack of education or whether it is through other hurdles, It's the ability for people to get a good paying job and to move up the ladder. And so CHCI is that ladder.
To stay on this, Congressman, in terms of the representation you see on the Hill, are you seeing a change in Latino representation, or is it still a problem? You know what I mean? In terms of like, is America being reflected in congressional staff, for example?
Well, certainly there is progress, but not enough. I think we need to do more. I think that the country not just to be reflected on the level of representation, but also of the folks that work for those representatives. They got to come from those communities. They know best, and so it's a constant struggle to get to that point. And we are moving forward. We're not moving backwards. So we got to push hard.
Marco, how do you navigate all this during what has become, I would say, a political divisive society? I mean, to put it mildly. How does representation matter? Like, how does it make it better for democracy, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the challenges we face as a society, one of the reasons we're so polarized is that folks don't know much about each other. And so, for example, I think in the case of the Latino community, people have formed, I would argue, sort of very hardened opinions, very hardened perspectives about our community, sometimes based completely on misconceptions, right? Based completely on a lack of actual understanding of our community or a lack really of knowledge of relationship with anyone from our community. As we know, our community, because we're so underrepresented, we're often not in the rooms where influential people, decision makers are around. And so the people who create the narratives, who tell the stories that we as a general public hear, often start with a distorted view of our community. And so I believe, and what our mission is to help put more of our emerging leaders into those rooms of influence so that people can see us and learn about us and hear from us and understand all the brilliance and creativity we have, all the leadership we offer to society. And ideally, I mean, in a perfect world, to change people's minds. And at worst case scenario, even if we don't actually change their minds, we at least provide a counter narrative. We at least provide a different perspective, a different opinion in terms of pointing out the way forward, which at least then maybe there can at least be a compromise or at least a different kind of outcome as a result of those conversations.
Congressman, what about you? Same question. Political divisive society. Why does representation matter, and why does this work matter during this time?
Well, first, as they say in the critically acclaimed play of Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story, right? That's a major challenge. And CHCI is here to tell the story of the Latino community. And of course, much more needs to happen. We're just getting started, really. We need a seat at the table, as they say in New York. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu and you're eating for lunch. And so this is not where we want to be as a community. And we have to fight to make sure we get that seat at the table so that we will be able to accurately, along with CHCI, be able to tell our story.
All right, so I have a question, and either one can jump in here. What do you tell the doubters, the people who say that CHCI is just, working for one party or not working for America? It's, with Democrats. Who wants that one? Do I ask the president and CEO of CHCI this question, Marco?
Yeah, I could take that. I could take that for sure. So the reality is that CHCI was created 46 years ago, 2 years after the formation of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And what people don't know often about the history is when the caucus was first created, for its first 25 years of existence, it was bipartisan. It had members of both parties. And so CHCI comes out of that legacy, out of that history of having all the Latinos in Congress part of the caucus. The Hispanic Caucus now, part of the reason I think you're referencing that is that currently the Congressional Hispanic Caucus only has Democratic members. However, CHCI is a separate entity. It's not governmental. We are a 501c3. We're nonpartisan. And that's not just in name. We have a board of directors and an advisory council that includes members of Congress who are Republicans. We work with, and when we do our convenings, we don't only invite Democratic members of Congress. We invite Republican members of Congress to speak and provide opening or closing remarks at our sessions and so on. And if all of that weren't enough to convince folks, what I love to point out to people is the first CHCI alum, a graduate of a CHCI program, who actually, ironically, did both our internship and our fellowship, who was elected to Congress, is current Representative Juan Cisco Mari, who is actually a member of the GOP. And he is a member of Congress, and he is also on our advisory council. So we don't just give lip service to that idea. We're truly about finding solutions for our entire community. And we want our entire community to be both represented in leadership, and we want our entire community to benefit from good decisions, good policies, and good leadership.
Congressman, what about you? Same question.
Well, I'm a Democrat. There's no question about that. But, I understand that the bipartisan approach to government is a good one. And it's one that is so necessary that leaves you no breathing room but to cross the aisle to the other side and make sure that you get the input from everybody, not just people in your own party, so that consensus is built on the important issues that confront our community. And so I know for a fact that the attitude of winner takes all, or is my way or the highway, does not prosper in Washington, D.C., that there has to be an effort to go across the aisle and build some level of consensus. And I know that CHCI tries to do that all the time.
So just for some final thoughts here, Marco, the misperceptions, we're talking a little bit about the work, right? About how important it is to have these voices representing our complex communities. But if you can just tell anyone, and then I'm going to ask the congressman the same question, if you can just tell anyone, it's like, this is the misperception about our community. This is the misperception about 2024. This is the misperception about CHCI, and why it's good for democracy. I mean, and I don't say that lightly. What do you say?
Here's what I say. I say a couple of things. One of the misperceptions about the Latino community is that we are somehow not an integral part of American society. We are sadly all too often seen as being other, as being somehow foreign, whether it's a misperception about the percentage of our population who are immigrant, and thank heavens for immigrants to the United States for so many ways anyway. But the reality is people take that narrative, that mental story a little bit further, and they believe that we're somehow less American, that we're somehow foreign, that we're somehow not a part of the fabric of our society. And that's a fundamental misconception about our community. Our community has had people on the land that is now part of the United States for 10, 12 generations. We have had people who've been contributing to the United States. Take, for example, the armed services. We've had people serving in every major armed conflict in the United States history, including the American Revolution, right? Latinos have been a part of the American story from the very beginning. They're not just recent arrivals. So that's like the big, in my mind, overarching problem that people start from about thinking about the Latino community, that they're somehow other, they're somehow not American. And then the thing I say about CHCI and why we're relevant and why we're important, in fact, is because whereas Latinos are now 20% of the U.S. population, we're 1 out of every 5 people in the United States, in government, in the corporate world, in philanthropy, in education, in medicine, you name it. In leadership tiers, we are lucky if we reach 5%. So instead of being 1 out of every 5 leaders, or even a little bit less than that, we are 5 out of every 100 leaders that are making decisions that are driving the direction of the country. And that means there's a whole lot of us who are being impacted by decisions being made by people that look nothing like them, that have not nothing in common, but that don't share the same background as they do. And in my mind, that's a problem, and that's a reason why we exist, to increase representation and leadership, to ensure that our voices are at the table just as much as everyone else's, so that we can demonstrate our own creativity, our brilliance, our own solutions to help forge a path forward that actually is good for everyone, not just for our own community.
Thank you, Marco. And Congressman, bring it home. Final thoughts on what Marco said, or anything else about what CHCI has done about this misperception about our community.
Well, I think there's a big misperception that Latinos are monolithic, but we're not monolithic. We bring others to the table, a host of experiences and ideas that build the tapestry that is the Latino community. So a Mexican American from Texas could be different than a Mexican American from California or from Illinois. A Dominican from Washington Heights will be a slightly different and a Colombian from Queens. And so these are the differences that are sort of like intertwined into our community. And when America speaks to us, they don't understand these nuances. They don't understand the fact that we're not necessarily monolithic and that our issues, although we have some common thread issues, we also have others that are very particular to each group. And I think that that's the strength that we have, that we have this diversity within us, that's connected by language and in many cases, history and culture as well.
Congressman Adriano Espaillat and Marco Davis of the CHCI, thank you so much for being on the Latino Newsletter.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go. How's that? Little Washington, D.C. power talk in the Latino space. And also, Congressman Espaillat, first member of Congress to be a guest of the Latino Newsletter podcast. That is a busy member of Congress. So thankful to his staff for giving us the time to chat with him. And Marco just breaking it down. Episode 10, member of Congress. How's that? The Latino Newsletter is produced and edited by me, Julio Ricardo Varela, and fellow Boricua, Joaquin Cotler. The mixing and sound design is also by Joaquin Cotler. Music by Cast of Characters via Soundstripe. You can now donate to us at thelatinonewsletter.org and click on the donate tab, or you can just, if you're listening on Spotify, there's a donate link. Just donate there. And if you like what you heard, share this podcast, rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Send comments. Just put a thumbs up, a little heart emoji, anything. I love the way I just said emoji with the soft G or the soft J. Emoji. Okay, there we go. You can also now subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeartRadio, etc. We also post all episodes on YouTube. On Twitter, we are at Lat Newsletter. Follow us on other social platforms at The Latino Newsletter. You can also send me an email to julio@thelatinonewsletter.org. I actually got an email this weekend. Don't know how I'm going to reply to it. Wasn't that friendly. But it's an opportunity to educate someone. So whoever sent me that email with your fake email, I will reply. So thank you for sending the email. And we'll be back next week with episode 11. Like now we can quote Spinal Tap. Ours goes to 11. Peace out, y'all.